This is an SPM standard English writing paper, or more commonly known as Paper 2. In this video, we are going to analyze every part of it in order to determine the most efficient way to tackle this paper. My name is Logan Yao.
And I'm Ong Kok Ray. We are two former senior students as today's speaker.
Right, before we move on, let's get started with the basics. SPM English exam follows the CEFR grading system, where this paper just sits right at the B2 level. All three essays have four different key components, namely content, communicative achievement, organization, and language. Here's how to score high or potentially full marks for all of these sections.
So, to score the full marks for content, students need to analyze and fulfill all the requirements in the question. For communicative achievement, students should focus on the tone and the register, which includes the friendliness and the formality of the essay, depending on which part you're writing for. For organization, students should use a variety of connectors which in their essay. Whereas for language marks, students of course need to utilize a variety of daily vocabulary and also less common lexics to score the full marks for language. Do keep in mind that each part is graded with increasing difficulty despite providing the same marks. So now that you have had a rough layout on the paper, we'll move on to part 1, email. Okay, so email writing comes under English Paper 2 Part 1. And today we're going to look at email in terms of the register, how we should analyze the question, what type of connectors we can use, and also what type of language we should use when writing email in order to score the full marks. First of all, let's talk about the register first. Email writing requires an informal approach and also friendly tone from students in their writing. And there are actually a few ways you can do this. First of all, students can use short forms, or we call contractions, in the email. For instance, I am is replaced with I am, you are is replaced with you are, and I would and I should is replaced with I did. This shows the informality of the email. And besides, students can also use discourse markers. This is very important to show the informality and the friendliness. For instance, maybe, perhaps, well, of course. And of course, the students are also encouraged to use idioms in their essay because idioms show friendliness, informality, and also convey complex ideas in a simpler way. For instance, had a whale of a time to describe happy, on pins and needles to replace anxious, off color to say that you are sick, and feeling blue to say that you are sad. So as you can see, most of these idioms describe feeling. Okay, so next, we're going to look at how a student can analyze the question. Well, normally the question will state a few requirements in the form of an email from a family member, a cousin or a friend that you receive. So we must carefully read the email and extract the requirements from there. So let's take a look at this particular question. Hello, how are you? I have some bad news. I didn't do well in my UPSR English examination. I would really like to improve my English. Should I join English enrichment classes? Can you recommend good English books to read? How else can I improve my English? I'll be waiting for a reply. Bye. So as you can see, in this question, I've highlighted each and every of the requirement that you need to answer or respond during your writing. So first, how are you? So maybe you can respond, I'm fine, or maybe you're busy lately. And then the sender said, I didn't do well in my UPSR English examination. I would really like to improve my English. So this is also a statement that you should respond in your email. Maybe you should say, oh, you feel sorry about this current situation, and you should respond to each and every requirement that is stated in the question. Don't miss out at every one of them, so that you can score the full content points. So the sender also asked, should I join English enrichment classes? So this is another question that you should obviously answer. Can you recommend good English books to read? So in this case, you should recommend good English books, maybe 1 or 2 books. And Maybe you should state where he can get the book and state reasons why the English book is suitable for him as well. This is very important because if you don't elaborate on your answers, you also cannot score the full marks for your content. And the sender also asks, how else can I improve my English? Now, this is very important, you should take note. How else means that you should state other ways besides joining English enrichment classes and reading English books. Do not repeat the same point so that you can score the content marks. So in this case, there are 5 requirements for you to answer, and you should fulfill all of them to score the full content marks. And I will not provide sample answers for this question, and it's your turn to try and answer this email and train your writing skills. You can post your email in the comments and we'll reply to you as soon as possible. So another key thing to remember is that students must use connectors during email writing, and these are the examples of connectors that students can utilize when writing their email to score their organization marks.
For the full list of connectors, check out the link in the description after this video.
Okay, so the last part, let's take a look at what type of language we can use during email writing. So, about the language, it is pretty sufficient if students can accurately use a variety of simple daily vocabulary that suits the informal register of the email itself. Avoid being too aggressive when it comes to the usage of words. This basically means that students should only use simple words instead of very complex and less commonly used words in verbal communication. So in verbal communication means that we seldom use in our speaking or communication daily. So in this slide you can see that we should use hungry and starving in our email instead of ravenous or famished. And for happy, we can use delighted or pleased instead of exuberant or exultant. For concerned or worried, avoid using too complex or aggressive when it comes to using your vocabulary. That's the main thing. So, what's the takeaway point? First of all, friendly tone and informal register. Email requires students to use informal language when writing, and it must be friendly as well. Next, students must analyze the question prior to writing so that they can fulfill all the requirements and do not miss any content marks. Third one is utilize connectors. As I've said, students must use a variety of connectors to score organization marks. And lastly, students are encouraged to use simple language or daily vocabulary and avoid being too aggressive when it comes to the usage of words. And that's all for part 1. Thanks for watching, and we'll move on to part 2.
Guided writing. This part usually incorporates a friendly to semi-formal or neutral register. Most of the time, one of the questions will require a student to voice out somewhat formal opinions, while sometimes the target reader isn't as formal, hence the writing style. Moving on to the content, it is always recommended for us students to carry out a detailed analysis on the question before proceeding to plan our essays. Let's take a look at this example right here. Your class has been discussing eco-friendly products. Your teacher has asked you to write an essay on it. After reading the question, it's always a good idea to look for the target reader. Since it isn't stated anywhere here, we can just stick to the normal, semi-formal writing style. Also, the phrase eco-friendly products highlights the theme of this essay, which revolves around the environment. Now that this is done, let's move on to the 3 bullet points. In your essay, you should include an eco-friendly product you use in your daily life, reasons how the product helps to save the environment, and a way how the product can be promoted to the community. In this section, always keep a keen eye on the articles such as a and the usage of s in verbs and nouns. This is due to the fact that both of these are key determinants for the content points to be written. Case in point, the article "and" in this first sentence indicates that only one product should be described, while the words you and daily life means that the product should be used on a day-to-day basis for us students. There's one technique that can be used in this section, which is summarizing the whole sentence into one keyword. In this case, the first content point can be summarized into what. What product are we going to use? Moving on, the S behind the word reason means that for the second content point, there are two subpoints, namely content point 2A and content point 2B. Summarizing this whole sentence gives us a keyword, which is effect. The effect of using the product to the environment. Positive ones, of course, in this essay. Lastly, and as always, the word implies that the question only requires one way to promote the product. And the word community highlights the target audience. For content point 3, we can summarize it into the keyword method. Now that we have a general idea of what we are going to write, let's move on. Now that we've analyzed the question and completed the planning, it's time to write. There are various ways to start a paragraph, and the ones listed here are just some of the most commonly used paragraph starters. We can write a fun fact, include a general statement, or just ask questions in general. Here's an example. If I were to write a general statement based on the question just now, focusing on plastic pollution, it would sound something like this. Due to the spike in plastic waste production following the Industrial Revolution, eco-friendly products have been on high demand. Or, if we want a friendlier approach, we can ask questions. Of course, there are tons of ways to start a question, and the ones listed here are just the tip of the iceberg. Anyways, can you imagine ... What would the world be like today if ... and how many hours do you spend on ... every day? And so on. Writing a paragraph starter is really important, as not only does it attract the reader, but it also gives the reader a general idea on what's going to be elaborated further on in your essay. Not forgetting that, the sufficient usage of uncommon vocabulary is also a plus point for your language section. Yes, I know. Collecting vocab can sometimes be a tiring process. So during your free time, why don't you read and apply some of the thematic vocabs covered in the textbook? Some of them include environment, technology, family, shopping, and the list goes on. Sentence structure does matter. An examiner will be really bored if he just reads the same sentence structure every time. So stop using this subject-verb formation, and maybe try to start your sentence with, say, a gerund or a preposition. This way, you can create a variety of sentences and hence produce variation. Lastly, a decent concluding paragraph should include a brief recap of the introductory paragraph, as it provides coherence for your whole essay and acts as a reminder for the examiner. Right, and one more thing. Never, and I mean never, add new points in your concluding paragraph. This paragraph just allows you to voice out your final thoughts and also reiterate for a bit. So I believe this sums up our 4 key components for part 2. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video with part 3.